Hey, how's it
Hello.
going, Clint?
Doing good, sir. How you doing?
Heck yeah, it's another great day to be alive, and it's everything's busy and everything's good. A lot of things are happening. Blessed to have you here. Today we got Clint Curtis, the new ROV county clerk of Shasta County here, kind of stirring things up. Things are getting kind of crazy with you being appointed as the new ROV, mainly, but also the county clerk, which is kind of wearing two hats in one. I don't know how you differentiate which hat you wear when, but anyways, I'm blessed to have you here today to tell us a little bit about yourself, what you want to do, and who you are. So I'd like to just start out with, who are you? Where do you come from? Tell us about yourself. That's what I want to know.
Kind of the startup story, huh?
Yeah.
Name's Clint Curtis. I got into the whole election issue way back in 1999. And essentially, I was the programmer that wrote the initial code, the prototype code for the election machines. You know, both the electronic touchscreen and the scanner, the whole thing all works the same way, right? It's just a counting machine. And I wrote the prototype. And when I wrote that prototype, the request was put in that they be able to go and hit a certain combination on the screen or put a combination somewhere, set a flag. And then they could adjust who would win each race. So by race, they could go through and pick it. So I'm thinking, well, obviously they're trying to keep these electronic machines from coming into being and showing that they cannot be trusted, right? Because they can't be. It's a program. It does whatever you tell it to do. It has no conscience. It doesn't care who wins. If you tell it to cheat, it will cheat. If you select who you want to win, it will perform the math and make that happen. So I wrote it, told him, wrote a white paper next to it, says this is why you can never trust the machines, because you will never know what's going on unless you go through the source code, you blueprint the machine, you do all sorts of things that no one's ever going to do all the time. And that's the only way you could ever use them. And lo and behold, they said, nah, we're really going to use this. We're not going to do that. And shortly after that, the hanging chads occurred. And then they had...
Was that in 2000 or?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
And so they had a program to replace the hanging chad problem before the hanging chad problem ever occurred, because it had never occurred before in Florida or anywhere else. But Jeb Bush was the governor of Florida. The person who wanted the vote flipping software was Tom Feeney, who was his running mate the first time he ran and was then Speaker of the Florida House. And so what they did in Florida is they got thinner paper and they cut it different. And then it had hanging chads. They'd never done that before. Did they invent it? Sure seems like it, but they already had the solution. And then along came Java, and they push out all these machines everywhere. And ever since then, elections have been screwy. They have not been normal. Prior to that, you would have any sort of polling, usually exit polling, but usually pre-polling as well. And the elections would pretty much follow almost exactly. They knew who was going to win and by how much by the time they were done, simply based on polling. After I wrote that, that never worked again. In fact, we stopped using it because it wouldn't match anymore. Although we still use it to judge whether foreign elections are actually valid. Interesting. So it only works in foreign countries, it doesn't work here, which is odd. So essentially that's the way it was. I told Congress, and then I've been battling this for 25
When
years.
did you first appear in front of Congress? Was it like 03 or something?
That
or?
was 2004.
2004. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So around 21 years ago.
That was right after the Bush-Kerry race where, because in my program, I wrote it.
They're cousins, by the way.
Your cousins?
No, Bush and Kerry are cousins, by the way.
Oh, are they? I did not know that.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. But go.
That's
yeah,
kinda weird.
Apparently, we have a Republican and Democrat running against each other, and they got asked. I think it was a 60-minute episode, and the guy asked Bush and Kerry on separate interviews, and they go, "Well, you're both part of Skull and Bones. You're both your cousins, and like, what are we supposed to think about that?" And it ended up being to where they're like, well, it's a secret, it's a secret society. I forget exactly how they said it, but it's kind of funny how they're cousins and they're both members of Skull and Bones, and they kind of both laughed it off.
Well, they're not allowed to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
It's a secret.
They said it's a secret.
Secret.
Can't say anything about it.
Because, of course, you know, this club has definitely got secrets that are more important than choosing the President of the United States, obviously, right? So anyway, so I told everybody, I've been telling them ever since then. And then in 2020, because mainly the Democrats were complaining back then. They were the ones that understood and were doing it, but they weren't really working hard on it. They were kind of just touching their toes in it. And then the base was complaining, but the upper level politicians weren't really doing anything to make it happen, to actually try and address it. In fact, they continued to make it worse, where they were putting out legislation which prevented the public from actually counting ballots, looking at things, you know, the whole 9 yards, is basically pushing the public away as far as can. It says the elections belong to the politicians, leave them alone, they got it, shut up, go away. So that's essentially where it went. In 2020, and some people complained. John Kerry, in that race, he complained for about 6 weeks trying to get it done. Then he sat down. In 2016, Hillary Clinton complained also. About 6 days.
Right.
And then went away. You know, in 2020, though, same screwy things, more voters than votes, more, you know, all of the indicators of it being an equitable, fair election were off. You know, you had returns coming in with one candidate way ahead, and then 5 minutes later, they're behind. Made no sense. Completely upside down, you know. Because generally in an election, if you have the first 75% of the election, the last 25% never changes. It's kind of the same.
You know, the first 5 or 10% you could say as like a larger...
A little slop here or there.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. You have a larger margin of error.
Right.
But when you start getting to 75%, you got to understand that's going to kind of probably trend the same way.
Right. You're going to get a smattering of just about everybody who's voting, and it's kind of going to be the same. So... you know, when you get to 75 and it's all looking good, and then people go to bed and they wake up the next morning and then everything has changed, they start going, that's not good. So in 2020, Trump noticed something was wrong, and I contacted him before that. So, but he didn't fix it before that. Of course, I don't know if he could because, you know, he was running. But in 2020, they started looking at this and go, something isn't right here. So once again, I expected, well, yeah, I got 6 weeks and I had 6 days. I expected maybe 6 minutes out of him, but that wasn't the case. He tied on to it and he actually tried to fix it. And he didn't back down, which is pretty impressive because everybody else backs down. They call you sore loser, you know, give it up. It doesn't matter. So here they called them election deniers. Even though the Democrats have been election deniers for 20 years, that's okay.
Kind of like calling someone a conspiracy theorist, like
exactly,
with the JFK assassination, just throwing it out there.
Anything you don't agree with, and you don't want to investigate it. They come up with some
terminology to make you look crazy.
Yeah, they don't want you to investigate it, give it a title and call it crazy, you know. And then you get the media jumping on board and just basically repeating what the government tells them, like the government ever tells them the truth. So you'll see media come on and go, there was no problems with the elections. Okay, cite your source. How do you know? Oh, Fred told me. He works, you know, with the government. And Fred's going to tell you the truth?
How about citing an unknown source or an anonymous source told us this? And then they run the story 100, 1,000 times. And yeah, it's pretty wild how they do that.
Yeah, and I always thought the media kind of had a little dog in the fight anyway. Because if you look at the testimony I gave before Congress in 2004, you'll notice that it's very grainy and homemade.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every major news source was at that event.
Yeah.
ABC, NBC, CBS.
No high quality video?
When I got up to testify, now they had basically recorded the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because Jesse Jackson was there and Adam Schiff was there. All the big boys were there, right?
Yeah.
So they recorded the whole thing. When I got up to testify, because they knew what I was doing, because I already provided an affidavit to Congress on it. But when I got up to testify, every major network dropped their camera
Yeah.
and left the room.
Kind of like if there's a candidate who is not part of the big boy club, they'll show a video of the stands of the stadium that someone's coming to with like 5 hours before it starts with like 5 people in it. They don't show it when there's 50,000 people lined up to get to it or whatever. And then there could be an event where the chosen person is at the event and they have like maybe 50 people to make sure all 50 people are right there
Right there on camera, huh?
Yeah, right in front of the camera.
I don't know. It's there seems to be kind of a little thumb on the scale when it comes to that sort of thing. So we went through all that. You know, I got a thing for 60 minutes. We're going to put on 60 minutes. You remember Dan Rather was reporting on George Bush basically skipping his duty.
Yeah.
Because he was in the National Guard. And if you're George Bush, you don't have to go.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yes. Yeah. And to my way of thinking, you know, you get some high-powered playboy rich guy that gets out of going to Vietnam by getting in there. Do you really expect him to come and fly a plane? And do you really want him to? Because he's probably not very good at it, right? It's probably like a secondary thing. So, but anyway, Dan Rather reported on that.
Yeah.
And then they went after Dan Rather and got rid of him. Prior to that, I had a 60 Minutes that was actually looking at it. After Dan Rather went away, that went away. They just stopped calling. And then they called back about a couple years later, and they said, we might want to put on your story. Do you have any evidence, like a lie detector test or anything that would prove what you're saying? I said, actually, we did. We took a lie detector test right after that.
No, like,
so
we're not going
go.
to report on that. No, I'm just guessing because I have no idea.
That's exactly what they said. That's not exactly the direction we wanted to go.
You're like, wait, but you just said, do you have anything like this? You're like, oh yeah, actually we did it. And then they're like, well, actually we don't want that.
Yeah, that's not actually what they wanted to hear.
They wanted to ask you if you had anything, and then they wanted to report on you not having anything. But then when you had it, they just don't report on it.
Right. Just let it go then. So that never got out though. So it's kind of a tainted media. And I think that's why a lot of Americans don't even bother anymore, because now you essentially watch what you want to watch, you know, the guy that agrees with you, and you don't really listen to the other side because you don't really know if it's true or not, you know, 50-50, you know. I know you're a little young for Walter Cronkite, but Walter Cronkite was the guy who got on there, gave you both sides, cited his source of where he got his information. And if his information was, this is what the government told me, that's what he said. He didn't go in there and say, I know this.
He wasn't biased.
Right. Or try and say that was his thought, you know, because you see these guys are there all the time going, there is no evidence. Not, I don't believe there's any evidence, or I have been told there's no evidence. They go, there is no evidence. Like they're reporting it themselves.
Yeah, here's the evidence on this side. Here's the evidence on this side.
Right.
You make the decision.
You make the decision.
You, the people, make critical think for yourself, and you figure it out what you think the truth is.
Right.
Now the media is like, they tell you, don't be a critical thinker. Listen to the experts. Don't do your own research. That's the next shirt coming out, DYOR. Do your own research.
Yep.
So anyways, and they tell you don't do your own research because you're not able to critical think on your own. You just let us spoon feed you what reality is, and you're too dumb to figure it out for yourself.
Which doesn't work too good anymore because there's so much information out there now that people can actually read and think for themselves and look at both sides and figure out what's going on. So when you have a CNN or a MSNBC saying they're going, this is the story, no one buys it at face value. They check it out. And since you're only telling one side, it never works out for them. And eventually they stop watching that. So the ratings go in the toilets because they're essentially talking to themselves or to people who really are really lazy and don't want to look around. So
there's only a small percentage of people, I think, now that trust mainstream media. I mean, the mainstream media used to be the beacon of truth, or, you know, and there used to be way better reporting, and it used to not be as propagandized. You know, it used to be way better. And I'm not saying there wasn't a lot of biased and propaganda involved in it,
Right.
but man, it's gotten so
People were trying to do it. But
they were trying, and it's gotten, and they might have gotten like fired and stuff, but now it's like so, it's so obvious that they're pushing an agenda that most people are kind of shying away from that and looking for alternative media or doing their own research.
Right.
And yeah, so we live in a different time now.
And this last election actually just brought that out more because, you know, you had Joe Biden, who everybody was saying, they're perfect. He's great. He's the smartest guy I ever met. He stays up all night and runs circles on a track. That's what all these people were saying, you know? And then when you see him in that debate or in some of the other clips that, you know, aren't cut, that wasn't the case, you know? And I like Joe Biden. I met Joe Biden back when he was a whole lot younger.
Yeah, I honestly,
he was a sharp man.
when I saw him in his inauguration, or I don't know if that's what you call it, when he got brought into the Senate, right?
Uh-huh.
And he was like really sharp.
Oh, yeah.
And he was the most honest person I ever seen. They asked him, they said, I'm paraphrasing now, and I'm bringing stuff up a couple times now that is like 20 years old from my memory. But I remember he said that a reporter asked him, they go, well, just showing that you got in here and you're so young that there is no corruption with politicians and this and that. And he actually said that, well, let me tell you this. He goes, to get to this position, he goes, you have to go to the people that have the money, and the people that have the money, they expect you to do certain things. And so he basically explained that to get to the level that he was at, you couldn't do it without being corrupt.
Right.
And I'm not, you can look it up though. I mean, you can look that up when he actually got inaugurated into the Senate. Yeah.
And his presidency was very liberal. But if you knew Joe Biden, you would know he was not a liberal. He was a centrist.
Absolutely.
So
He was.
I think he was not in charge probably even the first 6 months he was in there. I think it's just the way it was. Because his presidency was markedly different than he had been before.
Oh, okay. Okay. So if you're going there, then we got to talk about this, because he was signing executive orders, and this was during COVID, and everyone was wearing masks, and Kamala Harris was sitting right next to him, and he goes, "What am I signing here?" And it's a hot mic, and she goes, "Don't worry about it, just sign it." It's all. I don't know if you saw that video.
I didn't see it.
No, I'm telling you.
But I
he's
believe
sitting
it.
there and he goes, "What am I signing here?" Looks up at her, and she goes, "Don't worry about it, just sign it." And it's all hot mic'd out. And it's like, and he goes, "Just say it." I'm like, wow, how much more? I mean, there was so much blatant corruption, and but absolutely, I was just
The same thing happened
backing you.
with
Go ahead.
Reagan's presidency. Reagan was really good, morning in America, everything bright and better for 6 years. Those last 2 years, I think he was on autopilot and Bush was running the show because it changed completely.
HW.
Yeah, it changed from this morning in America to this dark ops CIA thing going on. So
I think there's probably something to that, because I mean, I know that after his attempted assassination and everything, that
took a little out of him.
I think he loved his wife so much that he kind of put his wife and his own life in front of the country, which I think is kind of wrong. And I don't want to bag on him, but I'm just saying, like, and who knows the threats and all the stuff behind the scenes. I don't know, but something happened for sure.
I think he just deteriorated. When you get a certain age, things slip. I saw a clip once where he's standing there like he's got that blank out look, like Joe Biden got a lot there
Oh my
at the
gosh,
end.
yeah.
And he was just sitting there blanking out, and they were ready for him to speak, and some guy walks up, hits him on the shoulder. He goes up, hits his mark, and does his speech. Perfect, right? Because he can do his speech. He's an actor.
Wow.
So he was perfect.
You know, it's kind of
He was a
interesting.
blank canvas before it started. So
I have not seen that, but that's very interesting. You say that. That's a whole nother conversation. I'm not going to go there. I want to actually go back, because here in Shasta County, people want to know who you are. I want to know, like, where you went to school at, what you believe in. I want to know. I know that's not what we're here to talk about necessarily, but I actually like to go back to who you are growing up and stuff. So
okay.
tell us a little bit about yourself, like before 99, before all this voting stuff and politics and stuff. So
Was there anything before 1999?
I mean, I was born in 78, and I know you were born in 65?
58.
58? What the heck? You look great for your age.
Well, thanks, but I'm
I was
not.
guessing.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, basically born in a little bitty town in Illinois. There's 5,000 people there when I was born and growing up there. And now, 50 years later, there's 5,000 people there. So it's one of those thriving communities. Normal kid, growing up, played baseball, football, stuff, right? Did touch a little bit with campaigns. I wasn't horribly political, but you know.
At what age are we talking?
10.
Oh, wow. Heck yeah.
Hey,
That's cool.
they're paying you to go hand stuff out. You know.
Okay.
Well, what the heck, right? So I hand out stuff for Richard Nixon and Paul Simon. Nixon was a Republican. Simon was a Democrat. But they both paid the same, so it worked for me. So
Were you passionate about it at
roots.
that time, or was it just a job?
It was mostly a job, although I did like Nixon. I thought still think Nixon was probably one of our best presidents ever if he hadn't been a crook.
I'll be
One
honest.
little thing.
I think that Nixon was great, and there's probably a reason he got character assassinated, but that's very. That's a different.
I think he had a bad character. He had that character flaw where he was paranoid that everybody was out to get him, and so he'd go to great lengths to make sure they couldn't, which kind of.
I mean, going through
willing
file
to break a few
cabinets
laws
and,
to do
it. Yeah, that's true. I mean,
these days it would be nothing, right?
Yeah.
You know, these days they do everything to each other, but back then you weren't allowed to do that sort of thing. So, yeah, he was ahead by 30 points.
Yeah.
And he still felt the need to go out and make sure there's not something hiding there on him. So, a little bit of paranoia. But other than that, he did a great job.
Yeah.
You know, so, although today, Kennedy and Nixon would probably both be Republicans.
Yeah.
Just
I mean,
saying.
yeah, for sure. For sure.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I was a Republican because I was in Southern Illinois. And Illinois is a lot like California. California's a blue state, right? So everybody must be blue there, except they're not. Same with Illinois. Chicago's a blue state, but everything south of Chicago is pretty much Republican. There's just more of them than us, and so
Of course.
it looks very blue. It's not, but it looks that way. And California's the same way. So went to college at Illinois Wesleyan initially. I was in the top 95 percentile of the SAT test or something, so they give you a free ride. So went there and then transferred into Illinois State for really stupid reasons, but basically at Wesleyan they have a BA. And a BA, you have to learn a language. Can't be a computer language, which is easy. It has to be Spanish or French. And for some reason, my brain doesn't pick up foreign languages well.
Only ones and zeros? No, I'm just joking.
Ones and zeros I'm good at. I can get a computer language in a day and a half, and I can't learn to ask for where the bathroom is in a year on the other. So I switched to the BS degree. Didn't have to have that. I do a science. And then I worked as a computer programmer. I owned a few businesses, stuff like that. Then after I reported on the flipping request, of course, things got kind of sad for a while, because I was in Bush's, Florida, and talk about corruption.
Yeah.
Deep corruption. In fact, Bush just got out of his last corruption suit in, I think it was September of 2024.
Are we talking George W. or Jeb
We're talking
Bush?
Jeb.
Jeb Bush. Okay, because
Jeb
he was
Bush.
the governor of Florida.
And everything was just a mess. I mean, Jeb took all of Florida's retirement system and dumped it into Enron, if you remember what Enron was.
Yeah, I totally know Enron.
Enron was this public utility pyramid scheme
right?
that crashed down and basically bankrupted their retirement system. So, but they've got it all back. They're better now, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, so there was a lot of things going on. So for a while I was unemployed, I had to go bankrupt and all that. And then I decided, well, I'll just go to law school because, lawyers can be meaner than these other people and I'll have a little better chance, a little better footing. So went to law school, went to start out at Barry University in Orlando. And that was kind of easy. So I wanted to look for something a little harder. So I went over to Cambridge in England and did a semester or so there. And it was the same. It wasn't any harder. So then I said, well, maybe that's because it's in England. And in England, that would be a undergraduate degree. Law is an undergraduate degree.
Oh, okay.
And then you have to go and you have to basically intern to get where you want to go. But so I said, okay, I'll go to a top 100. So I came out to McGeorge and I finished up in McGeorge, which was still the same. It's all the same. It doesn't seem to make any difference. So it was all pretty easy. And then I got law practice and I did that. That pretty good?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so, okay. I mean, that's great. I just wanted to get a little bit of your background before we get to our, okay. So now that I got before politics and up to the 99s and 2000, 2001, 2002, now we're in Shasta County, 2025. You're the registrar. You moved over from Florida.
Florida. I was in New York also at the time. So.
Oh, and where were you living when you just now before you moved here?
Florida and New York.
Florida and New York. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Well, you
I
were
lived
living
both places.
So. Let's just say you were living on the East Coast.
Okay.
And now you moved to
Coast.
the West Coast to Shasta County.
Yes.
To become the registrar of voters, county clerk.
Yes.
Here you are. I mean, this is like probably the most hottest topic in Shasta County. There's been stuff going on here, and people are just like. People are like very passionate about the subject, and they should be, because this is probably the most important thing that we have as individuals, where we get to cast our vote and it counts for something. And there's a lot of people that think everything's fine and dandy. There's a lot of people that think there's a lot of issues, and
but they don't care. A lot of issues, but they can't do anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's people that think there are issues and they don't care, or there's people that think everything's fine and dandy, one or the other. But regardless, there's a lot of people who are very passionate about this, who want to have voter integrity. They want,
In Shasta County, they care.
In Shasta County, they care.
And that's
yes.
why I'm here, because the board cares and the people care, and this is the perfect place to essentially show that we can have elections that are honest, that are verifiable, even though you're going to be forced to use those stupid machines. We're going to basically catch the information before it goes into the machine and verify it also twice. And then after it goes to the machine, so there's nothing the machine would be able to do. The machine would be absolutely crazy for someone. I'm not talking the machine itself. It's someone pushing buttons, right? Yeah. For someone to actually activate something else.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people think, well, it's the machine vendors or it's this or that, but that's not necessarily true.
It's whoever's manipulating the program.
Right. Who has the buttons? I don't know, but this is what happened in Congressional District 22 down in Texas in 2022. We were monitoring, because I've been working on the election thing for 25 years, election lawsuits, monitoring progress, the whole 9 yards. So in 2022, there was a Democrat, a Republican, and an independent in the race. It's an R+7, which means 7% more Republicans than Democrats, which means it's a safe seat. No one's going to lose that seat, right? So there's no point in cheating. Why should you, right? At least for the Republican. I mean, the Democrats still cheat and make some miraculous win.
I mean, just cheat where you need to cheat. Why cheat where you don't need to cheat, right?
But in this particular case, they did. At 8:34 p.m. that night, because the independent was sitting there taking screenshots of all the county reporting, the Democratic and the independent candidate had exactly the same number of votes in 8 different counties across 3 different vendors. That should never be possible. So, and I'm not talking the percentage. I'm talking exactly the same number of votes. So there's one county that only has like 60 people voting in it. And so it had, so many for the Republican and then 21 for the Independent and 21 for the Democrat, which isn't ever going to happen. At 8:35 p.m., everything switched back. But for that split,
was it like they got caught or they they had to correct it because it looked too obvious, or
no,
what?
it's math. The computer was doing math. It was going through and it was pulling the math together and then redistributing the way it went.
Gotcha. It was a calculation.
Right. So a computer programmer looks think, look at there. We're doing the math. We're putting them together, and now we've got our split. Now we're going to divide this up by percentage, and we're good to go. No need to do that there. And yet that's what was happening. 3 different vendors, 8 different counties at exactly the same moment in time.
They had R2D2 running the
Who's
election.
pushing the button?
R2D2? Or I don't know who it was. I mean, somebody, but that's pretty interesting because it doesn't sound like it was manual of somebody manually doing it. It sounds like it was an algorithm, or I don't know if that's the proper terminology.
Had to be across 8 counties. In addition, you had other sort of weird things going on. So, none of that really made any sense. And it shouldn't have happened, but there it was. And so you had I think you had Sequoia, Dominion, and Hart. Mm-hmm. Not even connected.
Yeah.
But at the same time, every one of those counties was also using a program that was supposed to help their infrastructure from DHS. DHS had started to put out...
The Department of Homeland Security.
Yes. Had started to put out a free program that would check their security and help them with it. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that that's where it's from, but that was the only 3 things that I could find that they all had in common.
And we're still talking in 2022.
2022.
Yeah, I remember that.
So it was something called CISA.
I remember that. That was very interesting to me. I was going that's what Reagan said. The 9 words that you're supposed to be the most scared of is "I'm from the government and I'm here to help you."
I'm here to help you. Yes.
It kind of that reminded me of that with the.
If you see that, run, right.
We're gonna make sure everything is good. We've got control. I mean,
right.
That was kind of wacky.
So, yeah, it's kind of odd that could occur, but that's what happened. And so, but even beyond that, I've been working on this the whole time. So when Shasta County was actually read, and I applied last time.
I know I was very disappointed. But I think that, you're here now, and maybe the timing, I believe in a higher force of things that happen. And I think that the timing's right. Maybe it wasn't before. I was very disappointed though, that you didn't get, appointed the first time, but I'm very, very happy that you're here this time.
Hey, it was the board's decision. They made their choice. It is what it is. But you also have to remember that when that happened, Trump had not been elected yet. So there was no real backup. I would have been here fighting it by myself anyway.
Yeah.
Now...
Yeah. The timing is right now.
Timing might be right. Now you have Trump here pushing this down. He's never backed off that he believed the 2020 election was correct.
Yeah.
And you'll hear these news reporters come on and go, 60 different lawsuits, and he didn't show anything. Well, of course he didn't. He wasn't allowed to. He never got to check the source code in a single county.
Yeah, you don't have any standing.
Right.
I mean.
Right. Or we're not going to recount it.
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer, but it's pretty. I had people. Go ahead. Sorry, I'm not going to interject here. It's just
you're right. It's just they won't
like
let
trying
you
to
see
prove.
anything.
I heard you say it actually to me one time, where you said it's trying to prove that someone got lung cancer from smoking cigarettes for 20 years. Mm-hmm. Was that you or no? Okay, so someone said it's like trying to prove that you got lung cancer from smoking cigarettes for 20, 30, 40 years. How do you prove that it was actually the cigarettes that gave you the cancer, the lung cancer, right?
Especially if you can't see the cigarettes or any history involved.
So if you go into the courtroom and you're going these cigarettes gave me cancer, and Marlboro or whoever, I'm sorry, no brand names involved here. But
there you go.
If some big tobacco company has lawyers that with much more money come into the courtroom and then they go, well, prove it.
Right.
How are you actually going to prove that? You're going to be like, I took a drag and then I dropped down and then I had lung cancer. How do you do that?
Right. And it wasn't for 40 years before someone finally broke through on that. But even then, they at least had something they could look at. the elections don't give you anything to look at. They try and keep you from getting any records, keep you from doing anything. And the whole 5149 that I wrote way back when was based on the fact that it's far enough away that an automated recount doesn't come to play.
Wait. Are you saying that you wrote the code that says 5149? This guy wins?
5149. That was me.
Or you could be 59.9 or 49.999 or whatever it is.
Right around 5149 average, yes.
Yeah. So close to where you're like, there's no way it was rigged.
Well, it's so close you can't check it.
Yeah.
Because you can't poll everybody who voted. Well, you can, but it's pretty expensive. So, and most people won't cooperate, so it doesn't matter.
Well, on a state level, or I mean,
even on a city council election.
Yeah.
You've got 10,000 voters, and you have to go out and you have to find the difference between the 5149, which means you have to poll every one of them to find that difference.
And to prove it in a court, that would be very, very difficult.
And that's the only thing that proves it. The way the laws are written, you have to actually find those votes, even though you're not allowed to look at anything.
So I remember talking to you about doing something under camera, and you brought it up that I thought was genius, because it's like, if everything was under camera and you had the ballots coming out and it was all recorded, and then like say someone lost by 10 votes, well, they wouldn't have to pay for all this money to recount it. They can go back under the camera and hire a few buddies, or have a few buddies sit around. You could even drink a couple beers, hang out, and you would just sit there and go.
Don't drink too many.
Let's say it was
count to 10 could get tough.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay. Let's say you're not drinking beer, but you could sit there and count it, and you could have a clicker in each hand, and you can go click, 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 click,
right.
click, click. And you could figure out like, okay, I really did lose. Or you could figure out, you know what? I actually won by 20. Or you could figure out, I actually won by 40, or I actually lost by even more. But you could actually sit there and audit your own.
But you'll know.
You will know. And you wouldn't have to go through this whole process if it was under camera. So do we have anything in the like cooking for that?
That is in the works. What we're trying to do, when I'm trying to make modifications to the system, because right now the system was horrible. You could see nothing. They would do it privately in rooms. They even rewrote the ballots in little rooms sectioned off, so people couldn't even watch it.
I've done a lot of.
Nothing could be wrong there, right? I mean, privately writing your own ballot, what could go wrong? So, but what we're going to do is we're not going to open any of the mail-in ballots, because once you open them and count them, that information is out there. Now, you're not supposed to tell anybody what it is, but sometimes people do, right? You also have access to the ballots, and they're sitting there. So we're not going to do that. We're going to sort the ballots by precinct and send them to the precinct, and that's the first time they'll be open, first time they'll be stacked. You're not allowed to count them by hand in California. But on camera, we will stack things into stacks of 50, mail-in ballots as well as the same-day ballots. So every ballot will be on camera for everybody to see. Once you have all your things boxed up, you sort them, you put your seals, you transport them back under a camera, because I'm sure the person carrying them isn't going to break into them and then re-put the seal on. But I'd feel better if they couldn't, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. I mean, just that.
Right.
It's regardless of what I think. I mean, I think that your average person would just want to take out any equation of something that could be fishy, that could possibly happen.
Because generally things that could be fishy somehow, sometime will.
Yeah, and whether
someone will try and do something with it. So you get them back, you take them into the actual central where you're going to do the counting. Now, we could actually do the tabulation in the precincts. I would like that, but that's pretty expensive, because now you have a tabulator in each precinct.
Yes.
Some precincts have 4 votes. So pretty expensive count.
Not around here.
Yeah, around here. We have precincts had 4 votes in them. But
oh, wow. Okay.
I know. And you have some.
Okay, maybe okay. That's
they're way up here, way over there.
That's pretty sad, because there should be more than that. But
yeah, they are what they are. But let's say you had 14, still pretty expensive.
For sure.
So you bring them back,
very inefficient,
all under camera. Now they're sealed, You have it. You do it again on camera. You open your seal. You count through them again on camera. This should be an identical, well, a mirror of this count.
Yeah.
Nothing should be able to have been inserted because then you will see it. You'll be backwards because you're counting them this way, and when you come back, you're counting them the other way. But then you run up to the machine. Then you count them again. Another one. This should be the mirror, the absolute identical thing to this one because it's exactly the same. If the machine does anything, if you because things can, I can make anything cheat, right?
We can switch boxes out. I can make hidden door. Have you ever seen a magic show?
Exactly.
I've seen some stuff where you're like, what? And it like stuff.
So
yeah.
we're eliminating the magic show.
Yeah, exactly.
So at that point, you now have a count by here, a reconciliation here, here, and here. Then this gets put back in the same envelope with the same target so that if you do an audit, you have exactly the same thing. Audit you would do on camera as well. None of these ballots should change. Sometimes audits do change. We had a thing in 2004, if you look in Cuyahoga County, Ohio, because that's back when I was telling people how many audits to do. In 2004 or 6, I can't remember. I was working with Deborah Bowen. She's from California, and she was big on this stuff, right? So I was working with her, and we came up with a 10% audit. And then it went down to 6. And then it went down to 2.
So then to 1?
Huh?
Oh, no.
It might be 1 now. I don't know.
We have 1 now here.
Yeah, 1? Yeah.
Did you know in Shasta County that we can do a 1% audit? That's a 100% audit?
Of course. 1% is the floor, not the ceiling.
I know, it's so funny.
So you want to do 100%?
We can't do a recount here, but we could do a 1% audit. That's a 100% audit of this one
it's
over
an
here.
at least 1%. You can do more.
Know, it's so funny,
so
though.
far until the state,
I witnessed some of that stuff. I was like, wait a minute, though. There's like...
Isn't that the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a 1%, 100% audit.
Yes.
But we can't audit this one over here. That was 12 or whatever. Yeah.
Yep. Because when the board got rid of the machines and wanted to do a hand count,
Yeah.
which is very easy to do. I actually did a display here which showed you can basically count every precinct in about 2 hours, which is very easy to do. And especially here because the precincts aren't that big, but it should be that easy everywhere. Germany does it. France does it. All these other countries do it, right? And they say, well, that might work for Shasta County, but I'm in Los Angeles. You're quite a bit smaller than Germany.
Or France.
Or France.
That does it all by hand in
They do them all by hand and knock them
1
out.
or 2 days.
Right. And the way they do that is you get your people who are doing the counting, and some people say, well, that's too many volunteers. They're not volunteers. They're actually people that are brought in just like the jury system.
Yeah.
And that's your civic duty.
Yeah.
And in Germany, if you do the elections, you don't get stuck for the
You know what? I kind of like that.
jury.
If you, as long as the people selecting the people, as long as it's like a true lottery system, I'm just now, the light bulb went off because if you only had people who wanted to volunteer for those positions,
Exactly.
maybe you could get a group of people that want to do corruption.
Yeah,
but
you
if
have to wonder why they want to volunteer.
But just like the jury system, if you actually select them
Right.
with a true lottery system, and there's no way where they're all in cahoots with each other,
Right.
because how would you take all these strangers and be like, let's get together and let's make all this corruption together? That would be like way difficult versus.
My suggestion is they're counting on camera anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
If they get in cahoots and they cheat, you will catch them.
I know, but I'm saying I like the lottery system. I
Yes.
think that's great. Just like the jury
best way.
system. I never thought about that. That's amazing.
Yep. Germans do it. French do it.
I didn't know that.
And we sit around and go, how can you do that? I guess you just got to watch somebody because it's not that hard. Basically, I worked with Germany back in 2004 or 6, I can't remember, because they were interested
Around 20 years ago.
Yeah, because they were interested in, doing their elections right. Because, they come in with the machines trying to get them to do the stuff, and the machines were done, and their elections turned out really screwy, a lot different than they had before the machines, just like ours. instead of ours going, well, we're going to get rid of how we measure if the machine did it right, the Germans said, let's not let that happen again. And they actually have a constitutional case that says they will not use the machines or any sort of a method that the average boater cannot watch and understand. Nothing hidden. Why we can't do that?
It kind of reminds me of some of the stuff with Robert F. Kennedy being now, I know we're getting off track here, but talking about some of the things in the food and all this stuff. Like, it's like there's like Lucky Charms or whatever it is, the different foods that are here in the United States and other countries, in Europe specifically, you cannot sell that specific product. In fact, like Tide detergent or these different things, to call them out by brands, I don't care. They have things in there that are very toxic to people. Right. And they do not accept that in other countries. Right. But here in the U.S., apparently we just accept whatever is spoon-fed to us by the mainstream media. And
a lot of countries try and force you to eat good, healthy food, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't do that, which is good because I love junk food.
Yeah. Hey, I'm all for freedom.
When I was in England, I about starved to death because, I mean, I'm talking even their ice cream isn't real sweet.
You're like, can you get some real sugar here?
That's right. I had to put like 12 spoonfuls of sugar in the tea just to make it, drinkable. So I'm a sugar fiend, but.
Hey, I'm all for the freedom of choice with it, but there's some, that's a whole nother subject. Right. We don't.
As long as people know that they're killing themselves, okay.
Yeah, I mean, hey, just put a disclaimer. Hey, wash your clothes in this detergent or eat this food, and you'll probably die sooner. Then, as long as you're happy with that.
If they put skull and crossbones on my sugar, I will still eat it.
Yeah.
But at least I know.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so that's a whole nother podcast. We'll do that another day. That's a long one with me, though.
There you go.
All right, so we've had a lot of things happen here in Shasta County where we've had retaliation from the state, and so I don't know if you're anticipating some of that stuff. I kind of try to look forward and go, okay, we're going to come up with all these policies, and then the state's going to try to counter it because it's already happened to us. And there's, I'll call Rich Gallardo. I don't know if you know him. He was like saying, if we do this, they're going to do this. And he was actually wanting to separate the local ballots with the state ballots and then the county ballots from the state ballots, because he knew they were actually going to come out with a law that forbid us from counting and stuff. And then a few months later it happened, and I got to give him credit for that. But I there's been other things that have happened. And I'm just wondering, like, I don't know. It's a question I got to ask. Like, I mean, there's probably going to be some state retaliation.
Well, I don't know what they could do. They could say you can't videotape it, but they allow for observation. So technically, we could have 20 people stand there and watch it and, write down their figuring of what's going on so that they know the ballot orders and do it again. But that pretty much looks like they're trying to hide something, because we're doing exactly what they're saying. We're counting the ballots. We were counting them early, but we have to stack them. They always stack the ballots before they put them in the machines, because you put them through the machine in either stacks of 50 or stacks of 100. The only way to do that is to count them, right? Because they're going to come in, you have 344, so you have to know how many you have. And we'll do stacks of 50 because it's easier to monitor it. And it's easier for people to count, because, you don't want them to kill themselves counting it, because it gets kind of boring. It's not the most exciting job in the world, and they will probably be volunteers. So we get that one, we get this one, and all we're doing is just going along the way and making sure that we reconcile it every step of the way. So everyone knows that the machine can't cheat them. The clerk can't cheat them, because if they trust me, I will die someday. So make a system that the next clerk can't cheat. Because like the previous clerk, had all kinds of weird things going on where their name would move around the ballots and stuff. And, can't have that. We have to go straight by the rules, straight by the laws, and make sure it works. But you got to keep them tight, because, we see this in all these places. We saw one in Montana. A lady was running in a race for called supervisor of elections there. ROV is the same thing. And She got caught on camera because they had cameras set up, but they had blocked them for Election Day. Except their block had slipped. So we see her on camera waiting for the security guard to walk away and then running in there and shredding a bunch of ballots and rewriting her own. They can do that. You know what happens to people when they do that? Usually nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Are things different now?
No. Nothing happens. We had a court case down in Broward County. What's her name? Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Remember her?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
She was running against a guy.
Ooh, she's nasty. The curly hair, white lady.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to fight with her. But anyway, she was running against a guy, and he had polled really good. Might even look like he's going to beat her. Except that's not the way the election came out. The election came out completely differently, where she just skunked him. So he got a court order to hold the ballots. They wanted to destroy them, even though it was like a couple months to go, probably about 12. And they were still trying to get him on an early destruction because they didn't have the room, right? So he got a court order. They were to maintain those ballots and turn them over to the defense. That very night, her and the whole office stayed up and shredded every ballot with a court order on file. Her excuse was, they grabbed the wrong paper. Purely accidental. Even though they never stayed up all night shredding ballots before. What happened to her?
Nothing?
Nothing.
I'm assuming.
Nothing. And this was a court order. Didn't even find her in contempt of court.
Yeah, oops. It was an accident.
It's an accident. Yep. Oops.
I just smashed the hard drive with a hammer.
It happens.
It happens. I mean, I tripped over my carpet and the hammer was in my hand. The hard drive was sitting there.
I was shaky that day and kept
I was
hitting
shaky.
it.
I had a seizure.
Yeah.
Right.
It's crazy. And they let him get away with it. So, we're going to try and set a system that everybody knows is equitable and fair.
I heard a rumor that there was 11 lawsuits coming at you or something like that. I don't know. I mean, I didn't look into it too far, but I figured I'd bring it up and let you explain. Maybe, I don't even know if you know what I'm talking about.
I do. Did you go to where they did the selection for me and the swearing in and all that sort of thing?
I did. I watched just the part where you actually got sworn in. Though.
Okay, you missed the good part?
I missed all the previous. It's been a very, very busy last couple weeks for me with my job that pays money.
Oh, yeah. A job that pays money you actually want to pay attention to. That makes sense.
Well, I pay attention to most things, but it's been my paying job has been very demanding lately.
And you like a roof over your head and you like to eat on occasion, right?
Oh, and my non-paying government job with the mosquito vector board control, which I'm president of, so I have to. I had that meeting. Was that yesterday? Yeah, yesterday. I had to get ready for that one too.
Essentially, that was Commissioner Long.
Yeah. Okay.
He's not
I did see. Oh my gosh. Yes, I did see that.
He's not a fan. I don't know what his deal is. So if you go to bradblog.com, you will find out all of this stuff that happened when I reported it, the bankruptcy and the whistleblower suits and the whole 9 yards. So he goes in, he like cherry picks things.
So is this all like old stuff or
yeah,
what?
that's all old stuff.
Oh, so he's just trying to character assassinate you.
Yeah. So
okay. I thought maybe there was some like new like stuff with you becoming the ROV. There was 11 lawsuits against you becoming. So they're trying to
This is way back
Oh.
where I had to go to bankruptcy because they basically, when I was working for DOT, we reported all this. So we reported the Chinese spy that was there.
Okay.
And we reported the voting issue and we reported the overbilling on the government contract. So went along, replaced the program I worked on was called ARSYS. I wrote all the systems to make it all.
Is Jody a Chinese spy?
No, Jody is not a Chinese spy.
Okay, just making sure.
Henry Nee was a Chinese spy. But I wasn't sure of it. I just know that they were taking.
You weren't sure if Jody was a Chinese spy?
No, I was pretty sure about her.
But
Henry
okay.
Nee.
Sorry.
But they were taking all of this information from NASA, and that I was using to program the Maximo system, and then they were handing it off to Henry, which was this little Chinese guy was sitting there, and, I don't know, seems okay to me, right? But he was reviewing everything that we were doing, and then he inserted code in this one program I wrote, which diverted documents that should have been going to DOT to both DOT and to his computer. Escape routes, things like that.
Okay.
So I report all that, and it turned out, after they finally investigated it, that he was a Chinese spy sending missile chip technology to mainland China. Other than that, he's a fine guy, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was a great guy other than being a communist
spy. He seemed like a nice guy,
I mean,
yeah. I guess if you're really mean, you can't be a good spy.
I mean, who of us wouldn't be a spy for our own country?
Exactly.
I mean, you can't hold it against him.
Yeah, I mean, he was Chinese. He's very bright. He was like a mechanical engineer, a software engineer. He was like.
Now, was he sent here from China to be a spy, or do you think he was just loyal? He came here organically and then just decided.
I have no idea.
Yeah, hard to say.
I have no idea. But the company was Chinese.
Oh, wow.
And they were the one who was getting the information from NASA.
Wow. Yeah.
To supposedly give to me. But they still have contracts. So who knows?
There's a lot of fishy stuff going on with government still.
Florida government was horrible back then. So it got cleaned up a little under Charlie Crist.
Okay.
And Rick Scott.
Okay.
So they did a little to clean things up, but people can put their finger in the basket. You never know what's going on, right? So anyway, I report all that, and then they didn't renew my contract. And they fired the head of the department that I worked with. So she could actually file a wrongful termination, and they had to pay her millions of dollars. Me, I was an employee, so I couldn't get fired. They just decided not to renew my contract, which we all know was bunk, right? 20 years ago, you got away with that. Today, I think it would be a little harder because they have changed the rules somewhat. But since they waited till the end of the term, they could get away with it probably. But anyway, so, it took me a little while to get a new job because, Bush had his finger on everything, and it was kind of coming back that, don't hire this guy, So had to go bankrupt, and that's where the lawsuits came in, creditors. So, and that was his thing. That was, and he's got a lot of skeletons in his closet, which I am not going to talk about because it's improper. But I mean, I'm
always like, let's not talk about what other people's flaws are. Let's talk about what I can do.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And yeah, I mean, I know there is some skeletons there. We're not going to go there.
Yeah, let's not go there. Let's let that go.
It's all right. We'll let other people do their own research there.
That's right.
Okay. Okay. So there was a question of you living here.
Okay.
So there was a question of, does he live here? Is he eligible for this position?
Yeah, they were really grasping at straws.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it seems like some people don't want voter transparency, or they're just whatever it is. I mean, obviously they're not wanting. The day I met you, I was like, this guy's legit. I like him. He's a likable guy. He's not, in my mind, you're not a Republican or a Democrat, although I know you're a registered Democrat, but
Republican.
Wait, you're a Republican now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I take it back. You were a Republican. You were a Democrat. You were
As a Republican. I was a Democrat after working with the Bush folks and Feeney and all that, because I thought they were all the Bush Republicans were not my favorite people. So I got away from them. But then the Democratic Party has gone so far left.
So when did you come back to the Republican side?
Well, in New York, I was registered as an independent.
Okay.
Because I wasn't quite ready to take the step.
No, it's okay. I was just saying, I don't care if you're independent, right, Republican, or Democrat. I'm
probably all of those.
You have
at
integrity.
Some point in time.
You are your own person.
Right.
And I think that you're going to be the right person for this job.
I consider myself a centrist libertarian, really, but...
So going back to, do you live here? Sorry.
Okay, go back to where I live. So when I moved here, we did not have a residence yet, so our domicile was with Patty Plum, who's a friend of ours.
Yeah.
So she gave us a room, And we stayed there for almost a month. And now we found another place. And so we've now moved into another house, but I have to change the voter registration. We became official yesterday.
Awesome. So do you guys have your own place now?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Did you move all your furniture and all that?
Well,
Not yet.
most of the furniture is in New York or in Florida. So so far we have
Got to send one of those
three
pods
chairs
over.
3 chairs and a folding table. We're good to go.
Okay. All right. Next year,
Yes.
June 2026, you are going to be, Joanna will be running against you. I guess that's what she says.
Yes, that's what she
And are you wanting to, because you're appointed right now, but are you interested in running again in 2026 and staying here
Yes.
in Shasta County?
We definitely wouldn't want to give it back to Joanna and have it go right back where it was before, because then you have the same problem. I mean, they've been there for a while, so we've seen what they can do and what they can't. And if they can't do the job very well in the last 10 years, they're not suddenly going to learn from me and then change their mind on how to do it. I mean, under her and Tom Toller, which I don't think was really in charge at all, honestly, because I didn't see a real difference. But so I think basically he didn't know what he was doing, so he kind of let her run things, which is normal to some degree, I guess. Not for me, of course, but normal for a lot of people. And but essentially, you know, they redact everything, they give nothing, they put people behind these, you know, gated walls, and that wall's coming down. So we want that wall to come down so the public can actually see what's going on. The election belongs to the people and not to the politicians. And if she won, it would go right back to belonging to the politicians. So we're going to make that change and hopefully set an example for the rest of this country, and probably trying to make a change nationwide at that point. Right
Awesome.
here from Shasta County.
Right. Well, I appreciate you so much. I've said it before, but I'm just like, I appreciate you so much for coming in here and taking the time. And thank you so much for coming to Shasta County little old Shasta County, with all the big stuff you've had cooking all over the whole United States and Germany and other parts of the world. And we're blessed to have you here. I believe we will hold your feet to the fire if you don't.
I hope so.
Yeah. So if you don't perform, then we're going to hold your feet to the fire. But we do understand you have to work within the parameters of what you can. But I think
Right.
you're going to do the best job you can. And is there anything you want to say in closing comments here at the end?
The people in this county are great. They're dedicated. They want to make that change, and I'm here to help them do that. And we will make it so that it works, and we'll fight every parameter we have. And of course, now we have a partner, because now Trump, who got elected, is writing these executive orders that are basically going to help us get where we want to go. So all these things that people want to get done, he's basically trying to push down, because he actually wants to fix the elections, as opposed to, you know, all the people out there saying, oh, you know, he was trying to take over the government. No, he was trying to fix the government and make sure that you actually have a real election. So instead of being against democracy, he may be the president that actually gives us democracy.
Right.
That we haven't had for probably 20 years, maybe more.
All right. Clint Curtis, I appreciate you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for coming on. And just to let you guys know, Trump is going to steal the next election through voter machines. So if you're liberal, definitely get on the board of getting rid of these things, because we definitely need to do that to preserve our voter integrity and our liberty and the most sacred thing that we have, period, which is our vote, which means more than anything else. And make sure that you help get rid of these things and support people like Clint Curtis, because like I said, Trump's going to steal it all.
Don't forget to join me at the Reading Library this Saturday, May 24th from 3:30 to 5:30 with Dr. Douglas Frank at the Meet Your New ROV Town Hall.